doesn't get any better than this.
Once inside Lambeau Field, a fan can expect to see anything, from a cheesehead to a legend from the past. But to truly understand what it means to be a Packer fan, you need to listen to the fans themselves.
Glory days are back, man. They're gonna do it today. The party era, baby.
The guy that owns a house over here for sale, and we asked him about the house. He said he makes $4,000 a year in parking in his front yard.
Go, Pack, go!
There's so much love here for the Packers.
Oh, yeah, I was a fan, you betcha.
The Green Bay Packers, the finest football team in the world.
This is when I knew I could never follow any other team but the Pack.
The car has 240 yards of rope in it, 20 different colors of rope. We have about 600 hours working on the car. We're hoping to get Brett Favre's autograph on the seat right along with Jerry Kramer, Ray Nitschke, and Fuzzy Thurston. So hopefully that'll pan out for us. We love coming to the Packer games, as you can tell by the car. Thank you very much.
Go, Pack, go! 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 Go, Pack, go!
As a family, we've been here since the beginning.
Well, you ready for the big game, Christian?
Are you excited? Cool.
Favre takes, looks the middle.
That's a great thing to sit here with these two boys, to have them come into Lambeau Field and be sure that it gets into their system at an early age. Great-grandpa tells you a little bit what it's all about, and what I don't tell you about, Uncle Mike and your dad tells you, huh? Isn't that right? Sure it is, boy.
Just ask him who's number one.
Who's number one?
Who is? Who's number one?
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre. You bet.
Yeah.
Back to throw Favre, rolling out right. He throws the end zone. Touchdown!
Who stinks?
The Bears.
The
That's
Bears.
right.
Absolutely.
Things that they're going to learn is the history of the Packers, how it all relates within our family also. They're going to have a part in them, part of the Packers. You know, they'll feel it inside them.
They'll grow up in their system just like great-grandpa did. It'll be part of their lives.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. What's going on?
Hey.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Packers After Dark. It's been a season. It's been a year since we've done this. Well, an off season at least. I think the last time we did Packers After Dark, I think it was you, Monty. I think we did a little bio on you. And
I think we did. Yeah, I think we did a meet and greet.
A little meet and greet for Monty. Obviously, we got Monty Moore here. We got Mark Oldacres all the way from the UK. What is it, like 5 a.m. there, something like that at this point?
No, for once it's like a reasonable time, and also because you guys have daylight savings like last week, and ours hasn't kicked in yet. So I'm only 4 hours ahead. So it's like for me that's pretty good. Like, you know,
that's great. That's and Perry. Excuse me. Everybody knows Perry Goldstein. How are you? Good to see you.
Hey, guys.
Hey. Well, obviously, it's been an insane offseason. We have absolutely nothing to talk about. And yeah, we'll go from. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just wanted to get you guys on because this is an insane time right now. The last I heard, we're waiting for some sort of trade compensation to figure out what's going on with Aaron Rodgers here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that.
It's done, but not done. We just have to figure out what it is at this point.
Exactly.
Is it done until it's really official?
Yeah.
Please let it be done. Like,
right.
We can't go back now.
No. It's done.
In a perfect world, it happens while we're doing this. So
that's true. It could happen at any moment at this point. We don't even know what's going to happen really. But what do you guys think? Who do you think is going to come back in a trade if they do it? Do you think they're going to bring anybody back, any players back or anything like that in exchange for one Charles Rodgers?
I mean, I would say the player probably determines what other pick they get, or if they get more than one, just because, like, let's take, for instance, right, you have someone like a Jermaine Johnson who the Packers liked. He's a first round pick. So if they're not going to give you pick 13, you have a needed edge. So do they give you an edge that they know you already liked, and then you're okay with the second round pick? Or, other than that, I mean, what other players from the Jets or the Packers really want? Maybe Corey Davis, who they don't even want to be on the team.
They're going to cut him anyway. Yeah. They would throw him in that trade. I just don't see the Jets giving up a player they drafted in the first round last season. That feels so stupid. Why? What incentive do they have to do that? It's not even like equal to me, right? Because you can say, well, it's instead of a first round pick, like Rodgers is 39 and Jermaine Johnson could potentially be on that team for another like 8 years. Yeah. There's no way. I think it's going to be a lot more boring. It's going to be a lot more boring than people think.
Exactly. Rodgers literally just got done saying that he's 90% retired anyways. So that's not good.
I think it's going to be like a second round pick and a conditional something next year if they get him to play. And what they're trying to figure out right now is how much the Jets are taking on from his contract or not. I think that's probably what the holdup is. I bet the Packers don't want to hold any additional dead money than they already have. And the Jets probably don't want to pay a full 60. But to me, the Jets put themselves in a bad position by waiting this long, because if you're looking at like a Daniel Jones contract and he's getting 40 mil, right? Like 60 mil for Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem that crazy anymore, right? So I bet that's where like the holdup is. I think it's fun to see like, oh, what player could they get? Would I love like Elijah Moore? Of course I would, but I think it's going to be a lot more boring than that.
I agree. It's hard to picture anything. I think they Nagler posited this on Twitter not that long ago. It's probably just the compensation, like you said, Perry, that they're just trying to work out, because at this point, we all know Rodgers is probably done in a year or two anyways. So what's the point of going through all this, like, oh, it needs to do this, and the stupid leverage word everybody's been talking about? Like, there's no point in going through all of this. They're probably just trying to work out how the Packers can offload the financial burden. Like, hey, you could take him for a second round or a third rounder. That's fine. Maybe even give us some sort of like scale where if he hits MVP or something like that, then we could come back and get a better pick for that or something like that. But until then, hey, we need to help with this $40 million cap hit that's coming.
That's the win for the Packers, is if they can offload all that money, right, and reset and have some cap space. Because like right now they can't sign anybody. I don't know if you guys saw, but like Dalton Schultz is going to the Texans for like 1 year, 9 mil or something like that. Yeah. The Packers could easily do that, but that's pretty much like all their cap space left. And do they want to go all in on a player when they don't know what the rest of it's going to look like until this deal is done? Like, probably not. I think that I hate the L word, the leverage word. I'm so over it. I'm so over it. Like, all three of these people in this scenario have some different type of power. There's like an equal dynamic happening. They all, at the end of the day, want the same thing to happen. They want Aaron Rodgers to play for the Jets. They just all want the best result out of it. So
the Packers have moved on. It's over. The Packers have completely moved on.
And to me, without using the L word, it doesn't look good for anybody right now, but the longer we wait, the worse it looks for the team that doesn't have the player that they want. So, I mean, I've seen a couple people say this, and I kind of feel the same way, that the longer this goes on, the more it's worth it for the Packers just to be like, well, instead of taking like a 3rd-round pick, which we should never be picking in that round anyway, it might be more worth it to them to never see Aaron Rodgers put another jersey on, period, at that point.
Yeah, that's something I thought about too. Was like, at what point does the compensation become not important? Like, it's like you'd rather him just retire then. Like, that there will be a point where that hits. And the interesting thing is, like, we still don't know for sure what the Packers are asking for. Like, we've had oh, they're asking for 2 first-round picks. We've had they just want to get off his contract. They'll like basically take anything. Like, I don't think that's the case, because like, what's the holdup at this point? But I honestly, at this point, any trade could happen, any compensation, and I would not be shocked at anything. I have no idea. I've gone from thinking the Packers have no leverage to they have all the leverage. Like, honestly, whatever happens now won't be a surprise at all.
Yeah, the only
I
thing
think
we know
at what
is we
point
don't
do you
know.
ask the question, like, is it worth the distraction?
Right.
From the Packers. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, we saw the report today. I don't know if you guys saw it, that Jordan Love's out in California. He's working with the wide receivers. Aaron Jones is out there. Like, that's what this team should be focusing on. And instead, we're all just waiting on this player that realistically is not even going to be in the locker room, and the Packers don't want in the locker room next season. So the distraction in the locker room, moving on, actually giving Jordan Love the ability to be QB1, like step into that leadership role. Like, I think all those things are important for this season. The earlier they do that, the better. But again, they have no incentive really to move Rodgers when they don't like really have to, but you just don't want this taking up any more like mental energy.
Do you guys
there comes a point where the team has to move on for sure.
I was going to say, so the next big milestone is the draft, right? So if this doesn't happen before the draft, I think at that point, that's probably one of these teams. Okay, this was like our demarcation point. Like, now that the draft is over, either the Packers, that's their line in the sand, or that's the Jets' line in the sand, where they're going to bow out at that point, or the Packers say this has gone on too long and it's become too much of a distraction for us. And then do you renegotiate at that point when someone tries to pull out at the end? Like, that's going to
the Packers have to move him. Like, he can't just he could show up at training camp and like just be Rodgers and like fuck shit up. I don't know. Can we curse on this?
Of course.
I just did. But like, the Packers have to move him. I actually think, Monty, that like this gets done before the draft. I don't think
that's when the Packers That's when the Packers lose their leverage anyways, the draft. It's over. I know we hate using that word, but it's true. Like, there's no leverage after that. It is what it is, right? Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Jet. How do we get there? And that's why I'm more inclined to believe, based off everything we've heard and everything we've seen, that this deal is probably already done. Because how do you get on an airplane and fly out to Malibu and have a steak dinner and not have a deal in place? Like, that just makes
every decision maker, every decision maker on that in that franchise was on that plane, essentially. So how do you fly across country, take Aaron Rodgers out and try to woo him and be left with enough egg on your face where you say, well, it's actually not done yet though. Like, what were you planning?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
we
got
still
to
don't know what we
there
have
had
to
to
give
be
up,
some sort of framework. Yeah, exactly. There had to have been some framework. I think it's, like we said earlier, it's got to be all about the financials. But I want to go back to what Perry said, Jordan Love working out with his receivers. Why do you think Packers fans reacted the way that they did today? It was on Twitter. You would have thought we won the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, we haven't seen this happen in 4 years, 5 years. So
it's new,
right?
It's
like,
new.
We see lots of other quarterbacks do this, and
yeah, exactly. People were talking like Rodgers did this, when he was younger. It's like,
ago.
okay, but it's been 10 years.
Yeah. I think that's the thing of why the reaction is strong, is because it's like two things, right? So it's the glimpse to the future that like this is going to happen, obviously, at some point, and these are the guys that we're going to be watching next year, and that's like a fun thought. And also just like, it's nice that the receivers are like actually friends with the quarterback. That's nice, I think. Like, and they're like of a reasonably similar age, where they're like the relationship is more like friends than like children who could disappoint him at any moment, like, and be punished for that. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
okay, to be fair, he's like 15 years older than all of them. They don't have to be friends. I saw a lot of people on Twitter being like, Rodgers isn't at DeGuara's wedding. And I'm like, yeah, why would he? They're like 10 a decade apart. Like, they're just colleagues. But I do agree with you. Like, it's nice to see, right? Like, this is our future. We love the chemistry. We love the idea of, like, we saw a little glimpse of like the love to Christian Watson thing. And it's just not like, we've been dealing with a lot of drama and a lot of BS for a couple of months. And this is just like the first glimpse of something really exciting and
normalcy.
And happy with literally no asterisks next to it. So it's just nice.
You hit the nail on the head, Monty. Normalcy. Like, it's been okay, let's go back. This is what I wanted to get into. Nice little warm-up session there, fam. Let's go back to 2018, right? We have not had a normal season since Rodgers broke his collarbone. 2017, right? He breaks his collarbone. Yeah. We have to watch Brett Hundley the entire season. No disrespect to Brett the legend. He went in and beat the Bears in Soldier Field. Shout out to Brett Hundley. He really came in under the lights and performed the best of his ability. We appreciate you, Brett Hundley. Hope you're living the dream over there in the XFL. Listen, he breaks his collarbone. We go through that, right? And then Mike McCarthy gets fired, right? 2018, the next year, right? And everybody put that on Rodgers, right? So from that season on, it's been nonstop drama. It's been chaos. That's right. It's been the hiring of the new coach. It's been the audibles. It's been the Matt LaFleur thing. It's been whatever. And now here we are, right? All the way. It just feels like the end of all that drama. And so seeing that tweet today, I've been seeing that tweet.
Yeah, and we've said, and I've seen other people say, I'm looking forward to rooting for a quote unquote boring team, or one that's not constantly under the microscope. Now, this next coming year, I don't think you're going to get that, because there's no way the Packers are going to be a out of sight, out of mind team with transitioning from the first new quarterback in 18, 19 years. But 2024, 2025-ish, yeah, it'll be nice to be a normal, boring team that nobody cares every single thing that they do.
Will that be true, though? Will that be true, though? I don't know, dude.
I
feel like the Packers are like the Bears, the Steelers, the Browns. Like, they're just franchises that everyone's always going to care about because of who they are. And like, everyone will be commenting on, well, has Love proven it yet? Post Rodgers, is Matt LaFleur actually a good coach because this is his first time? There's always going to be a narrative around the Packers.
Yeah,
I think
so. This
it's
is interesting.
The off season, right, is where they're like it'll be nice to have boredom. Like, we haven't had between like when the Super Bowl is and like now, like this period, you have like the combine and the draft, but the draft is still so far away. This period is supposed to be like so dead unless you're doing a lot of free agent signing, which the Packers don't generally do. So I feel like that's where it's media driven. Nothing to talk about.
Is it media driven? Mark, do you think it's media driven? There's been a lot of comments about that. It's got to be media driven. It's all media driven. That's what they're all saying.
What's media driven? Like the drama,
the drama itself.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Like, I guess to an extent, but also like Aaron Rodgers is a firm part of the media now. Like, if you go on YouTube every week on a show that has hundreds of thousands of viewers, like, do you know what I mean? Like, he loves, and I don't want to get too much into this, but like, he loves to kind of paint that like the media never stops talking about him and everything he does and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, that's true. But like, you go on a show every week and say like, sometimes things that are going to pick up traction. Like, the drill, and you use the media to your benefit as well. Like, he went on last week and didn't actually say anything negative about the Packers, but then allowed, basically through what he didn't say, for Pat McAfee to then for the next week just like rip the Packers to shreds. It's like, exactly what
we'll get into Pat. Like, we'll get into Pat here in a few minutes, because that's a huge story. Yeah, we'll get into Pat here in a few minutes for sure. That's crazy.
I was just gonna say, I don't think you can say it's totally media driven. I don't think you could totally say it's Aaron Rodgers driven. Like, clearly there's push and pull, and it goes both ways, right? If Aaron Rodgers says something innocuous that he doesn't want anyone to care about, it's not his fault that everyone cares about it. So people do run with that stuff, but that's going to happen. So, and like I said, it goes back and forth, because then he acts surprised that people got surprised by something he said. So it's just like a vicious cycle that I cannot wait to be broken. Like
he knows
Yeah.
exactly what he's doing every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
My other thing with Aaron, and I say this whenever like non-Packers fans ask me things about him, I'm like, that man's not just a football quarterback. Like that man is a full-blown international celebrity.
Yeah.
Everything he says is going to get picked up by the media. Everything he does. People are so in tune with his love life, all this shit. It's because he is that famous. He is just a famous person. And I just don't know if he like has fully wrapped his mind around that fact that he's famous outside the football world too. He's a household name and he's just always going to be discussed by anybody that cares even remotely.
Mark, you can speak to this, but it's like we don't have anything like football in America, you know what I mean? Or like football in the UK in America. Like he's the closest thing. Obviously, this is not a comparison. Nobody freaking clip this. I know what I'm talking about. He is not. He is not to the level of this person that I'm about to say, but he is America's closest thing to like Messi, right? Like you have these mega superstars in football over in the UK and throughout Europe, right? We don't really have that in the United States. So what do we have? We have the NFL, we have the NBA, we have these star players, right? And I think Perry hit the nail on the head. Like sometimes he doesn't realize, like, no, you are America's Messi. You know what I mean? Like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, like those were the last two left.
Yeah. LeBron
left at LeBron. You know what I mean? Like those are the last one. Like these household names in America, right?
I think it's a good point, and it's also like, but that goes both ways because it's almost like this is the situation he's in, but it is a situation that he like has put himself in a sense because like you say like Messi there, right? Messi is like the most, and I mean he's not like a native English speaker, so that's like maybe it's not the best example, but he's not like in the news all the time. He's just in the news for like being really good at what he does. Like
David Beckham. I thought you were going to say David Beckham.
David Beckham's like a good example, but like it's like Rodgers lives his life in a certain way, which is completely fine. He can do whatever the hell he wants, but like he lives his life in a way that makes him interesting to the media. Like Jordan Love, for example, like I mean, we don't know what's going to become of Jordan Love, how good he's going to be, and what he's really like because we haven't really had that kind of access, but it's just going to kind of be nice from my point of view to have a quarterback who just seems kind of like not boring, but just like when Jordan Love gets up and speaks, I don't expect him to say anything controversial. Like, do you know what I mean?
We're only going to care about what he does on the field, and other people probably won't care about more than that either. So
we're scratching the surface here of this really deep topic, and that I really want to dive into and get all your thoughts on. Like, there's a lot of people out there, especially Pat McAfee, Rich Eisen, Kyle Brandt recently. Listen, Packer fans are not necessarily ready to move on from the Hall of Fame quarterback, right? We understand how lucky we've been to have 30 years of showing up every September being a contender. Like, we understand that. I think Packers fans are just like accepting of the fact that, you know, number one, in today's NFL, you don't necessarily need a Hall of Fame quarterback, right, to win, right? It helps, obviously, but you don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Number one, we've watched Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is very good. We've watched Jalen Hurts. We've watched Jared Goff. We've watched Jimmy Garoppolo, and all these guys beat us in the playoffs, right? And obviously Jalen Hurts didn't beat us in the playoffs, but he went to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've watched these quarterbacks that are not first ballot automatic Hall of Famers win. And we're sitting here with Aaron Rodgers and we can't get it done. I understand there's a team game and there's a team around you and there's a lot more depth to that. But it's really interesting to me how people who are not Packers fans can't grasp Packers fans wanting to move on. What do you think about that? Why do you want to move on if you want to move on? And what's there to say about that? I don't even know, Perry. What do you think?
Oh my God, that was a lot.
It's deep, right?
I think a lot of things can exist at once, and I think a lot of people have issue with that, or like can't like grasp like the nuance of all of those feelings happening at the same time. Like, just because I think that it's best right now in the current state for the Packers to move on to a new quarterback from Aaron Rodgers doesn't mean it's the situation I hoped would play out. Doesn't mean I'm not sad to see this man go. It's the only person I've ever really rooted for. I was 10 when he got drafted. It doesn't mean that like I'm necessarily happy, right? Like, this is not the ideal scenario. Rodgers even said it on McAfee. He was like, would I have liked to have won one of these past few years and then retired and ridden off into the sunset? Like, yeah, but that's not the world we live in. So as a Packers fan and not an Aaron Rodgers fan, this is the right thing to do. It sucks. Yeah, I'm not super pumped about it. And like, I have plenty of feelings about him as a person. Those are separate from the football field. But like, I think all of those things can exist at once. And you could admit that this is like not the best case scenario and also say, well, we have to take what's right in front of us and it's time to move on.
Yeah, I think the emotion from my point of view is just like the correct emotion that I feel is just relief. Like it's not celebratory. Like I'm not like, oh, fuck that guy. Like I really wanted him to like get off my team. Like I didn't like him. It's just like we've been in this cycle for years and we didn't get it done. Like the years where they could have won their Super Bowl with Rodgers were 2020, 2021. Like where they should have won one of those Super Bowls and they didn't. And then once Adams was traded, I accepted that window was closed now, that we weren't going to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers again, which is why I was like, we should have traded him a year ago. I know it would have been difficult, but I thought we should have done it. So I've been like ready for this, but it's not like, I'm just ready to like turn my back on him. It's just like a relief of like, this is the right decision and we just have to move on. Like we can't keep doing this every year.
Yeah. I mean, I think from my standpoint, I mean, it all comes down to, do you think that they could have won? And again, like as someone that wanted to trade him after the 49ers game, it was, do I think the Packers could win a Super Bowl with him in 22? And I didn't. So now a year later, it's, do you think they can win a Super Bowl with him in 23? And I mean, my opinion on that hasn't changed. So, and same thing, it doesn't mean that you haven't enjoyed watching him or that you hope he fails where he goes elsewhere. It's more of, so whether or not you believe in Jordan Love, that's the guy that the team picked to do the succession plan with. And this is the last possible year where you get to see if that was if that is going to work or not. And you could have had 2 years, but now you've run out of time to say, well, it's worth it if we try to run it back one more time. Like you've run out of those chances. So you have to move.
Yeah, it's beyond. And that's the thing. It's beyond time. And I think where a lot of this comes in to play, where you see a lot of pushback for people that, want to really fight back on like these ideas of like, oh, it's time. Aaron Rodgers is not going to get it done, but why are the Jets pulling him in if they think they can get it done? And it's like, there comes a time in relationships where it's like, okay, maybe this is the time where you've tried it all, right? Mike McCarthy, Andy Reid with, the Eagles. There's a time in relationships where it's time to move on. And I think it's not about necessarily respect for that individual person. Like you can hold the utmost respect. I love Aaron Rodgers, the football player. He has been my favorite. Look, I'm right at 30 years old, right? I don't know anything else. When I was born, Brett Favre became the starting quarterback, right? Like in my generation, I don't know anything else. You think I want to move on from that? That's a massive chapter in my life. Of course, I am not ever going to be 100% ready to move on from that. And I think it's just kind of silly for a lot of these people that are online and even in our chat right now of just people that are just so like, they can't fathom the idea of the Packers wanting to move on from Aaron Rodgers. And it's silly to me because as great as he was and as great as he probably still is in the MVP and the way that like, he's probably the most talented NFL quarterback of this generation to ever pick up a football. Right.
Oh, easily.
But you can compartmentalize things. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is like, especially for people that are a little bit younger. And that's where I was going when I mentioned my age. Like it's hard to move on. Monte, you're just a little bit older than I think us here. Like you remember the tail end of the Favre era vividly. And so yeah, I guess I want to hear a little bit of your thoughts on like, how was that transition and why do you think it's going to be okay today?
I mean, I think believe it or not, I do think it was worse back in 2008. I think the only reason it seems worse now is everyone can comment on the situation on multiple platforms 24 hours a day. So it's in your face a lot more. But yeah, I mean, you guys know all those stories. I mean, when Aaron Rodgers came to family night, like he got booed. Like, I don't think that's going to happen to Jordan Love. Like kids were swearing at him in the Lambeau Field parking lot. Like, I don't think that's going to happen necessarily to Jordan Love. So it's more of, and maybe I'm a little bit of an outlier because by the time 2008 rolled around, I was ready for Aaron Rodgers to take over. It's just that every team has to move on eventually. And if you know it's going to suck, which when you get to a player of Rodgers and Favre's caliber, it's always going to suck. But in modern sports, if there's a guy that wants to play until he's into his 40s or mid 40s, in the case of Tom Brady, you're not going to go wire to wire with one team because that team, if they let you do that, is purposely putting off moving on from you. And the most important player at the position on your team becomes one of the most expensive players and one of the oldest. And that's generally never a good combination in the NFL. So if your team is smart enough to think forward, whether you think it's a little early or not, if they pick someone that they identify as this should be the next guy, then they have to be able to have that opportunity to pass fail. Because I think we all agree, right? If Jordan Love is bad, he's fired anyway. So for people that want him fired right now, like if Jordan Love is bad, you'll get your wish pretty quick. And if he's good, well, I'm sure you'll enjoy that he's good anyway. So
I mean, you're not wrong. He put his entire career. I mean, Murphy's going to retire anyways, but you're right with Brian. Like he put his entire legacy on the line with this pick. Yeah. So it wasn't taken lightly. And that's an interesting point too. It's like, what about this philosophy? It feels like Green Bay does things a little bit different than the entire league, right? And I think we've talked about that on each of our respective podcasts and things like that many times before. And Packers fans have known this forever, but Perri, do you think Green Bay has the right philosophy in 2023? They're using something they've been using since 1991. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I get the question and I get the commentary around it because it's like we have this blueprint and we've seen it twice over now. I don't know if that's how this front office is thinking about it. Like, I think if you look at the situation as a whole, like they took Jordan Love at a time where they had no idea what Aaron Rodgers still had left in the tank. Like they could have taken Jordan thinking that he was going to start the next season. Like they had no idea that Aaron Rodgers would have the bounce back that he did. So we have all these conversations about, like, never take a quarterback when you really need one. Well, at that time, maybe the Packers front office thought they needed one. And instead they got someone who ended up needing, spending 3 years sitting. And maybe that's actually what this player needed, right? Like he clearly needed some developmental time. My thought process on it, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, so like that's fine, but I just can't see the Packers front office moving on from Aaron freaking Rodgers. Like making that decision, like you guys have already touched on, is a career potentially ending decision. Like I know that they don't take that lightly. Goot knows this is his defining pick. I don't think they make this decision to move on and actually make Love their starter if they don't see something in him. They could have traded him at any point, maybe taken a loss on the first round pick, obviously getting like a fourth or something like that back. They didn't. They've stuck to their guns this whole time because I actually think that they see something in him. And I hate the whole like Jordan Love being in the same breath as Favre and Rodgers because I think that's really unfair to him, right? This is not the same league as it was when they drafted him. This is not, we have no idea what this player is going to be. And if you try to imagine him filling those shoes, he's just going to fail, right? Like there's no way he's the next coming of the Hall of Fame quarterback. But I do think that the Packers are smart that they had someone developmentally behind him that at least we know has the athleticism and potential like skill set to be something great. Now they get to decide. And if he fails, right, you don't even have to say anything. Goot will get fired. Matt will get fired. There's going to be a new president. They're going to eat crow, right? They will eat crow to the public. Like this. Yeah. But if he doesn't, then nothing that needs to be said. They made the right decision.
Then went according to plan.
Do you guys think it was intentional, the Jordan Love pick? Do you think, or it was just the only guy left with the first round pick and it's turned in, or first round grade, I should say, on their draft board, and it turned into this? Like, do you think they were really trying to like repeat history and do the whole, we're Green Bay Packers, we're going to let them sit for 3 years? I don't think so.
No. I think it was the latter, Tyler. I think it was like they maybe tried to move back. No one would trade with them. They had one player left with a first round grade and they said, well, fuck, we got to do this.
Yeah, I think Brandon Ayuk was the last wide receiver they had a first round grade on. So then they got jumped. The Niners took him. And then I think Jordan Love again, this is all speculation. We have no idea, but I mean, according to how things played out, and we kind of know like how we have their draft history, but I think Jordan Love at that point was their only player, period, that had a first round grade left. And right, you're sitting there staring you in the face. You're like, we have a first round grade on him, and he is there. So like Perry said, if they tried to trade back and nobody took it, what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah, and that's what makes this also interesting, because it was the catalyst, right, Mark? It was the catalyst for Aaron Rodgers, basically. And what's so funny to me is, like, you go back, and I was looking at this today in preparation for today's show. Like, you go back and you look at it. Do you know how many times Aaron Rodgers was adamant that the Jordan Love pick had nothing to do with his like disgruntlement that came out in 2021?
He brings it up all the time.
It had nothing to do with it.
Like, I love Jordan. He's a great kid.
Every time he gets in front of camera, he says, they drafted my replacement, though. It's like every time they drafted my replacement. But it had nothing to do with that.
It was literally.
We've heard that phrase more than we've heard the word leverage, because he can't stop bringing up the fact that they did it.
Yeah, they drafted my replacement. They drafted like, it's about the people, like all that stuff. But yeah, it's
that was
funny,
his main point of his disgruntlement, right? I mean, and that's what's so interesting to me. You go back to that initial bombshell tweet that Adam Schefter purposefully tweeted out on draft night, where it was like, Aaron Rodgers is so disgruntled with the Green Bay Packers organization that he doesn't want to
never play for them again.
Yeah, you cannot tell me that was not a direct correlation to Jordan Love being drafted. And that's what makes the whole pick so interesting, because everybody's like, well, how could they pick him? And it's like, well, there's levels to this, right? And that's the other thing too. I feel like a lot of fans, maybe everybody knows this, but based off what I see on Twitter, which is not, I won't go there, but I feel like a lot of people don't really like understand the concept of like drafting is a team effort, right? There's a whole team of scouts. There's a whole team of people that put together their draft board. And then Brian Gutekunst is the one that just like signs off on it. Right. So you're over here at this point where you've put together, like, I have this position group, this position group, this position group, and all of these people are named and layered under this position group, so that when we get to our pick, we can go down the list and be like, okay, this person matches with 30% of success rate. This person is going to be our pick at this level of round one, right? And so we get to this point where Jordan Love is the only person left with a first round grade on him. What are they going to do? Not take him because he's a quarterback?
So the way I would describe it is, like this started by us talking about, does their process work in like today's NFL? But I think instead of thinking of it as, okay, well, they have a blueprint because they've done it twice, so they're going to do it again. So that's why I took Jordan Love, because it just follows like what they like to do. I think it's not necessarily 100% that, but it's that's the way they lean, and it became convenient for them to continue in that pattern by how the draft works, right? So that's the meld of, do you draft for need or draft for best available player? Well, what you want to do is draft the best available player at a position that you need. So that's kind of how it worked, right? Like that's their process, and they had the opportunity to continue it, and they were probably like, well, this is
either
what we
way
do,
it worked.
right?
Either way it worked.
Yeah.
You got 2 MVP seasons out of it. So you know what I mean? Either way it worked.
And no Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
true.
That's
the problem, right?
It's interesting. Is like, you talk about, like, is it the Packers' kind of like history that led to making that Love pick? And I think it's not their history of the process they've gone over before that kind of made them like seek out Jordan Love. We definitely want to draft this guy. Like you say, if something different happens on that Thursday night, they pick Brandon Ayuk, they pick somebody else, like if they fall to it. But it's the process of the past that gives them the conviction to take Jordan Love.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they've done it before. It's the conviction.
What about the
that
trade up though?
Love that, Mark. Well said.
They didn't.
That was good.
They didn't win out because they, like, other teams would have. Other teams would have tried to drive, like, move back and like take pennies on the dollar, or they would have took a player that they didn't have a first round grade on because they would have been scared to take Jordan Love. But the Packers' history.
What about the trade up, Mark? Mark, why did they trade up for him then? Why did they trade up? Do you think it was because somebody else was trying to get after him, or what?
Well, I think it's that thing of like, we'll never know the truth of this, and the Colts kind of like did them dirty because they purposely came out in the media after and were like, "Oh no, we weren't interested in Jordan Love. No way, we weren't going to take him." Like when the Packers kind of, the sentiment was that they moved up because they were scared the Colts were going to take him. But I mean, the thing is, they traded up, but they traded up like a 4th round pick, and it's like, if you wouldn't trade up, using a 4th round pick to take
Right.
a player in the 1st round, you shouldn't be taking that player in the first
If
round.
if Jordan Love even becomes, let's say, league average, right? Do you really care that they gave up a 4th round pick to
Yeah,
have a
like, who
league
cares,
average
honestly?
QB? Like, who cares? And so I do think, again, we'll never know, but why do you trade up unless you think he's not going to be there the next time you get to pick? So
That's
giving up
really
a
what the
4th
reality is, right?
Who cares? Yeah.
It wasn't, and that's the thing. We're not trying to say that the pick wasn't intentional. We're trying to say that the taking of a quarterback to be the successor to Aaron Rodgers may or may not have been at the forefront of their brains at that time, right? They have a draft philosophy, they have a playbook, right? And they were running their playbook. And so just like a computer running code, the outside variables don't necessarily come into play, right? You put in the numbers and it goes, right? And that's the way it is. What I do think is interesting is the amount of parallels that have come out of this, though. Like, think about, the Favre thing. And I think that's why so many people draw so many parallels to it, right? Like the fact that Rodgers sat for 3 years, the fact that Favre was kind of disgruntled at the end of all this. Like, obviously, like you said, Monte, it was a little bit worse back then. The Jets, crazy.
Favre, when you think about it, Favre and Rodgers, both of their last games were losses at Lambeau in what you could consider, I'm going to consider that week 17 game a playoff game, right? Or week 18, whatever you want to call it. That was a playoff game. Yeah. So
shouldn't have been,
both of their last games ended at home in the playoffs in the freezing cold, throwing interceptions, and now they're both going to be on the Jets.
Crazy.
that is crazy.
Insane to think about. And the fact that Rodgers was 90% retired, but Favre actually retired.
Yeah, he was 90% 3 different times.
Literally.
We talk about as well, like if that is true, that he was 90% retired, and we don't know if this actually happened, but if Brian actually galaxy brained this and was like, well, if we just piss him off enough that he doesn't want to retire anymore, and like we get assets, we'll just trade him. Then
so do you?
Applause for you, Brian, because that
is a pretty good segue, because I have a question for you guys. So whatever the timeline was, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't listen to these entire interviews because I get way more than enough clips and like quotes. But so he was 90% decided he was going to retire, came out of his hut, right? Found out that knowing the Packers thought he was 90% retired, they were shopping him.
No, I don't. That's not how I took it.
The explanation didn't really make sense.
So
because it jumped.
I could have misinterpreted this. So this is like where Rodgers like wordsmithing, I think, is annoying. But what I got was that he went into it feeling like he was ready to retire.
Okay.
While he was in the darkness, he was like, you know what? Let me get out and see how my body feels. But maybe I do want to come back. And when he got out, he was like, I think I want to come back. And then found out while he was in there that something had changed from the Packers side and they may not necessarily want him back. So it's a little bit different than like the spiteful, oh, you don't want me back, so I guess I'll go play somewhere else.
Right, yeah.
Or that's part of it, right? But he, I think, had already made the decision that he wasn't yet ready for retirement, that he had a little bit left.
But do you know what's interesting about that is this is where his story gets a little bit like off, because he said that, right? And he missed that piece of like, why did you then decide you were going to play? But then later they said, oh, so if the Packers had said to you, we want you to come back, like you'd have been fired up to play for the Packers. And he was like, no. He was like, I felt like during the whole of last season, they never really wanted me back. I felt like it was my last year. It was like, so those two things can't both be true. So it's like, I don't know. Like, we're never going to find out because the Packers are never going to tell their side of it. Yeah. So, like, is what it is. But
and I mean, they shouldn't, right? Because who cares? Like, once it's over and he's gone, he's gone. Like, at that point, the parameters don't really matter because no one's going to, like, remember those.
Yeah, how the breakup happened, it really isn't relevant after the breakup, right? At this point, like it's, especially when you're trying to move on and go to the future about all of it. It is, I mean, obviously it's interesting. That's why we're talking about it. But I mean,
I have a question for you guys though, Ty, before you have your, like, as a fan, right? This is really messy. And I have this discussion with my dad all the time, who lived through the Favre era, right? Same as you, Monty, was ready for Rodgers. He's ready for Love now. Do we feel like the Packers could have handled this any differently, any better? Like, are there things that as fans, like, I can calmly say, I trust this franchise for the most part. And I'm not talking like they should have gotten him another receiver. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like in this like relationship, right? Because I, as a fan, really do feel like the Packers have catered to Rodgers for a number of years now when it comes to like needs. No question, right? And like at some point, do you fault them for being like, look, bro, we're tired. All right. We got this dude. We're kind of just done with this. And we just want to focus on the football of it all. Like, could they have done anything else?
I mean, so personally, the way I look at it is he kind of started losing me when it comes to like, because I think both the front office and him have traded jabs back and forth for months, trying to make the other one look like they don't want the other one back. Right. So for me, like the way I looked at it was, okay, you had this like summer of discontent. He decided to come back. He was playing here all season. Like it was a tough season. They gave him a Mondo extension, right? And not only did they give him a Mondo extension, the terms of that gave him a lot of leeway. So they're paying him $1 billion. They're openly fine with him saying, we think this is a year-to-year thing with a 3-year extension. So that's like right away, like, okay. And then to not do the offseason program, which ordinarily, obviously, is not a big deal because you have Adams, you have telekinesis with. He goes to those practices, so he can tell the receivers what he likes when Rodgers does show up. But he's gone. You've got a major transition, the biggest transition you've had on offense probably in 10 years, right? So he doesn't come to that program. And then towards the end of the season, start saying things like, well, if I'm back next year, it has to be like a mutual want to come back. Like, we gave you $1 billion and we're letting you do whatever you want. How are you possibly standing up here and saying, well, they might not want me back? Like, for me, that was probably like where it started to be like, okay, like we're just done then. Like, what else are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would like say they could have maybe done different is just like, the only thing I actually kind of critique them for is just not trading him last off season. But then it's kind of like, if they weren't going to do that, then it's like the contract thing, they absolutely shouldn't have given it to him, obviously, like in hindsight. But like, if he said he wanted a new contract and they said that they wanted him to come back, then they kind of had to give him a new contract. So it was like,
you're right. Yeah.
I kind of get it from that point of view. It's like, if he's coming back, then yeah, you kind of just have to give him whatever he wants. But like, obviously it's not a good situation now because of that.
Yeah. I mean, you have to give the back-to-back MVP if he wants to come back. You have to give him an extension, but you don't have to give him that extension.
I think
is that not the Packers saying like, we want you? Like, to your point, like they did that and said, we're all in on you. Like, what more could they have done?
Yeah.
Andy,
hey man,
Andy
you're gonna
Herman
be 40
about,
soon. Like, you're gonna be 40 soon. We're willing to give you this huge contract.
So whenever you want to retire with us, because you said you want to.
Yeah.
Andy Herman talked about like the Packers as a whole.
The thing with the bonus, so that's good.
Yeah.
Like, as in,
Andy Herman talked about the
tiny
Packers.
backstop it.
Yeah. Andy Herman talked about the Packers as a whole, how like they need to work on their bedside manner, right? When it comes to like, hey, you can go about things a little bit differently, right? If you're not going to re-sign a player, bring him in for a meeting and be like, hey, we love you. Thanks for what you did. We know you still got some left in the tank, but we're ready to move on a year too early, or a year early than a year late, right? Just be honest with them, be upfront. And I think that's what a lot of Rodgers, like, it's about the people, drama conversations that he was having. But where I get caught up in all of that is, it's like, I agree, right? There might be some things, and I'm not there. I'm not in the meetings. We're not there. We don't know. But there has to be a tipping point. And when you have a first-round quarterback waiting in the wings, and you spend an entire offseason roasting the franchise that you've been a part of for 17 years, right? And then you come and they allow you to do a press conference. They allow you to do this, right? And then they hand you this massive contract extension that is the most player-friendly contract you can possibly think of, short of just guaranteeing him $150 million for one season, right? It's the most ridiculous contract anyone's ever seen. I have a really hard time looking at that and being like, well, the Packers didn't do enough for him. And that's where it really pisses me off that like Pat McAfee and all these people are out here talking in the media about how Brian Gutekunst sucks and he's dumb and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's like, whatever. This team, especially Brian Gutekunst, has completely flipped on what he originally was going to do to cater to Aaron Rodgers. And that's where I get upset. And it's not carrying water for this front office. I don't like everything Brian Gutekunst does. I think he could have gone out and done more in 2020 to put the team over the edge when you knew you had a Super Bowl team. I think they could have done a lot better things in handling the way they handled Corey Linsley and Micah Hyde and all these other players. Like, I am not the biggest fan of those things that they do. But what frustrates me is when Aaron Rodgers comes out and says, and Pat McAfee comes out and says that Brian Gutekunst is like whatever, and he's stupid, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because it's like, you've got to be kidding me. They're catering to this dude more than any other player.
100%.
I think that
like go ahead, Monte.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, I put overall the blame, if you had to assign it, if you want to make a pie chart, I think most of the blame for how this has gone and is playing out, to be honest, it does land on the front office from one particular standpoint of when you, like, after you lost to the 49ers and you're staring the window in the face, right? Are we going to prop it open or are we closing it? And you not only, so you, again, I get it. Adams wanted to leave. So you send Adams away at that point. Yeah, it's really hard, but if you're not going to bring them both back, then you should ship them both off. But he keeps wanting to have it both ways, which is, if I bring Rodgers back, I keep one foot on this side of the line and we're contending, and then I still have Jordan Love, so my foot's on the other side of the line. So you keep trying to win with both roster building philosophies, and you can't. So the fact that he didn't choose one way or the other, I think definitely hampered them in 2022, more so than 2021, because I do think they were good enough to win in 2021. But you're still trying to have it both ways, and the more seasons you try to do it that way and you don't succeed, you have zero margin for error the next season. So he's not leaving himself with any room to make mistakes, and that's now where we're sitting.
It's a two-way street. So. And when the Packers did acquiesce to what Aaron Rodgers wanted in 21, it's hard for me to have empathy for Aaron Rodgers in 2023 when they did exactly what he wanted them to do. You know what I mean? They brought in Cobb. They gave him that contract. Like, it's really hard for me to have empathy for someone who it didn't feel like he was meeting the bargain. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from, right? The Packers are like, hey, dude, like, I mean, I don't know, but it feels like at the end of this past offseason, they might have let him come back if he was going to say, I'm all in. You know what I mean?
If he said it right away or something, like after the Lions game or whatever.
I want to come back. I want to be all in.
Yeah.
Like, it's a possibility they would have brought him back.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. Like, it's hard. It's hard to, and that's like, you give this dude the world and it just feels like he's just kind of like, you know, I didn't feel enough love. I didn't feel enough love. You know what I mean?
My question to him would be like, what then? Right? Because I get his point about treating players with respect, etc. And I think like catering to him to some respects, like he deserves that, right? Because of who he is. Like, there are very few players that you move mountains for, and he certainly is one of them. And he certainly is one of them when he's winning back-to-back MVPs, and the Packers are.
And he deserves that. That's the thing. You're exactly right. He deserves it.
And he deserves it. But like, and I get that this isn't the ending that you want, and I get there's probably some like heartache there, because I think like also what's not lost here for me is that like the decision Aaron Rodgers had to make in this scenario was also probably very difficult for him. Like, I don't fault him for taking time, right? Because you're choosing between retiring, you've been doing this thing for your entire life pretty much, and now it's like, what am I?
Now what? Yeah.
This is like some existential, like, who even am I? Versus uprooting your life of 18 years to go live in a new city with a new host of people that you're not like, this is a ginormous decision, but like, to feel like this team who we've all just outlined all the things that they've felt like they had to do while also running a business, while also trying to put a good team around him and juggle all of those things, right? And also have other star players that they have to also cater to. Like, what else could they have done for you? Because I thought the Packers were like pretty respectable until Mark Murphy made the comments that he did recently. That was like I was like, bro, just take the ball away. But like, what else could they have done to be like respectful to you?
If you needed any further evidence that they were done, it was for sure that like that was clearly like that was it. Like he doesn't care. Like he's like, I'm out in 2 years anyway. Like I'm over this crap. And but I will say I'm not sure what else they could have done in particular for this last season, 2022 season, outside of like again, you had already decided that Aaron Rodgers is going to be your quarterback this year. So I have a bigger problem, and don't get me wrong, like when I say problem, I like the picks that they made this year. I love Quay Walker and I really like Devontae Wyatt. Those again are both picks for those are going to help a Jordan Love led team more than they would help an Aaron Rodgers led team. So it was to me, okay, so why are you making those two picks for this year when you decided to bring him back for all this money? But then Goody did try to rectify that, and I'm glad it did not work. But he tried to give up a second for Chase Claypool, which was too little too late at that point. So I'm glad the Bears bit on that instead. But so I'm not sure what else he could have done this year to try to help anymore. Like they had no money, so they went for it.
I think if you look back on 2022, 23, injuries were the story, right? And a lot of people don't really. I didn't think about that really that much during the season because it was so hidden. But like you find out that not only did he have a broken thumb, but like his ribs were all banged up too. Like, dude, he was hurt. He was hurt all season long. And that's why I think he's going to go light. He's going to go scorched earth over in the Meadowlands. Like we all know he's going to be ridiculously good next year. And that's good. I'm happy for them. Like good for Jets fans. Go enjoy it for maybe a year if you get that out of him. Like that's awesome. But last year, you're exactly right. There's nothing else they could have done, and he's always said, I didn't want a farewell tour, but I almost would have preferred it if he would have been like, yeah, this is it for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like there could have been like,
and
not drag it out.
I'm really rooting for him. The only way I do not want him to massively succeed on the Jets is if the better they do, the worse something the Packers get in return. Otherwise, I hope he lights it up. Like, I have nothing against wanting to see him do well. It just like it's more of it's gonna be weird to not see him be the QB for the first time, but also it's also nice to know that like okay, this is all going to finally be over at some point.
I think as well, like if we talk about the front office, like just circling back to that. So this whole thing with like how they treat players and stuff is really like getting on my nerves because it's like ultimately, right, the only person excuse me that's really complained about this like publicly is Aaron Rodgers. Like he's complained on behalf of many players who he says were wronged on the way out, but there have not been many other players who have come out of Green Bay and complained about how they were dealt with. Maybe they have a little bit, but like ultimately the issue is that they were cut. Like they are obviously angry with how it handled, but ultimately they just didn't want to get cut. They weren't ready to leave. That's the issue. Right. So that inherently says that they were treated well when they were here and didn't want to leave.
What did Cobb say? What did Cobb say when he got back from the Texans?
He got out of prison.
Out of prison. Yeah.
Just said the Lions disrespected him with the offer they gave him. This is part of the business. This is part of what you signed up for.
And this is where like Rodgers is driving the narrative, right? Because now it's all about how the Packers treat their players, and it's just like that. It's just not true. Like how many, like Alan Lazard, for example, right? Just said, "Oh, didn't seem like they were going to miss me too much over there." That's fine. He feels disrespected that they didn't give him a good contract offer or an offer at all. However, they plucked him off the Jaguars practice squad, made him a starter, and eventually earned him $45 million from another team.
They gave him the opportunity. They gave Alan Lazard the opportunity to earn enough money that they can't afford to pay him, and that's supposed to be disrespectful. And how many? What's been the franchise that gets praised more than any other over the last 20 years? The Patriots. The Patriots are ruthless about cutting guys early, and no one ever says that they don't treat their players correctly. Again, they have the ultimate armor of that they've won 1 billion Super Bowls, but process is very similar. Results aren't, but that doesn't make the process bad. If the Packers had won 8 Super Bowls, then no one would complain about the way they do business. It's just it looks worse because they're not winning at the level that a team that operates almost nearly the same as them is winning all the time.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Allen Lazard. He was a phenomenal role player for us, but the Packers put him on a pedestal when they made him a wide receiver 1, right? And I understand that like this offense doesn't really operate like that. Like depth charts are more of a byproduct to the team than they are necessarily like a way of operating. This isn't the West Coast spread offense, right? So like Allen Lazard, but they put him in the spotlight with Aaron Rodgers. They gave him that opportunity. And you know what? Like it works when it works and it doesn't when it doesn't. So I'm happy Lazard got paid. He deserves.
Yeah.
But that's part of the business. And I just don't appreciate this slander of this team right now when it just feels like they can't win. They can't win no matter what they do. And it's not.
Unless they keep everyone forever and pay them the salary that they want. And that they sign all the receivers for Aaron Rodgers.
They did that with Ted Thompson. They did that with Ted Thompson. They held on to these guys forever and ever and ever and ever, with the exception of like Micah Hyde and Corey Linsley. I understand Corey Linsley was part of Brian Gutekunst's run, but like they did that with Ted Thompson. They held on to guys way too long. I understand Charles Woodson too, so maybe my point is got some holes in it there, some Swiss cheese holes. But you know what I'm saying? Like they held on to guys for way too long. Way too long.
Where are the warm fuzzies if the Packers go to Allen Lazard and say, we literally can't afford to pay you what you're worth, so will you come back for $6 million? Like, where, like, so is the
team that pissed though? To be quite honest with you,
for the Lions game, he's like, I'm not coming back anyway. He literally said he wasn't expecting to come back.
Also, here's my thing. Here's my other thing about this, and then I want to know if there are other topics. But like every single one of these guys, all of them who go and play for another team for a year or two, who maybe don't have the ending that they love. We hated what the Packers did to Jordy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all come back.
They come back.
A 1-day contract and retire with this team. Because at the end of the day, they know what they are. They're Green Bay Packers. And guess who's going to do the same thing? Aaron Rodgers. He will come back. He will forever be a Green Bay Packer. He will have his name in the Ring of Honor. He will be in the Hall of Fame. He will have his Packer 12 green jersey in his Canton locker. And guess what? All of this in 20, 30 years, it's not going to feel so insane because this is just what this business is. He still wants to play. It's not working anymore. All these other guys, like, did Jordy do anything with the Raiders? No. Look, I advocate for players all the time. I'm happy Lazard is getting the bag. I think he deserves it. I was so happy for MVS. I was cheering for MVS in the Super Bowl. It's the only reason I was rooting for the Chiefs. But the Packers have to make business decisions. If they don't, guess what? We're not talking about 30 years of contender football. We're talking about bad football because they don't make these decisions.
I said something similar. I'm glad Allen got 11 million per. I'm glad MBS got 10 million per. I'm also glad that the Packers aren't the one paying them that money. And there's something to be said for like you said, Perry, like a lot of these players always come back. Like Greg Jennings and the Packers publicly refuting for 5 years on First Take and whatever other shows he's on. And he came back for a ceremony at Lambeau Field last year. Was it last year or the year before? It was recently. So the only other recent guy I can think of that won't do that is probably a Micah Hyde because he went on to Buffalo and was like a stellar Buffalo Bill and was a Pro Bowler and he signed a second contract. Yeah, for the most part, people are salty when they get fired or cut. That's not uncommon. That's a human emotion.
These are all human beings. They're allowed to have their feelings.
Yeah. Do we think Tom Brady is not gonna have a ceremony with the Patriots because their divorce was pretty ugly and then he went elsewhere and won a Super Bowl? No, they're gonna love Tom Brady. He's gonna get a statue, I'm sure. So all this stuff is very reactionary, in my opinion.
And that's the thing. I think you have to compartmentalize and not go into, and we see a lot of this on Twitter recently with a lot of people that are just like, hardcore Aaron Rodgers stands. And I'm just going to say it, like, we love Eli and we appreciate what he does on Twitter. Like, he's got his little videos and he posts all the highlights and stuff like that. But like, he's really taking this thing hard, right? This Aaron Rodgers moving on hard, but it's not just him. He kind of represents like a faction of people on Twitter who are really upset at this. And I think where we get into the weeds here is people kind of create these straw man arguments of like, if you're ready to move on, you hate Aaron Rodgers. And if you hate Aaron Rodgers, then you're carrying water for the team. And it's all black and white. And I understand that that's the internet, but we have to be able to compartmentalize the difference between, like multiple things can be true at once, right? We hear that all the time on Twitter, and it's true. Like, multiple things can be true at once. I love Aaron Rodgers, the player. I still wish he was a Green Bay Packers quarterback, but I understand the organization wanted to move on. I am not a shill for the Green Bay Packers. I'm not paid by the Green Bay Packers. That doesn't mean that I'm slobbing on Brian Gutekunst's knob. Like, I am okay with the fact that the Packers are ready to move on. And that's where it gets frustrating. And I kind of want to get into this. Like, obviously you guys saw Pat McAfee's comments on what happened. You know what I mean? Where he was talking after he was talking to Ian Rappaport, obviously after the Aaron Rodgers
I actually
interview.
didn't watch this or hear a single word.
So,
I could not care less, quite frankly.
Okay. Monte, I want to give you the floor here. I'd like you to give the non-emotional, non-hyped up, very point blank, non-biased. What did Pat McAfee say about the Green Bay Packers organization?
Yeah, so he basically made the point that Brian Gutekunst has no idea what he's doing. That he literally said something to the effect of, Joe Douglas has been a smart GM and Goody has no idea what he's doing. Completely,
the guy who took Zach Wilson at number 2?
Completely ignoring the fact that Zach Wilson was handpicked by Joe Douglas, and obviously, we've all been getting way more interactions with Jets fans than we've ever wanted in our entire lives. But
I live in New York.
That's true. But so people are saying stuff like, well, we can't hold him drafting Zach Wilson against him because everyone else likes Zach Wilson. And then are also like, but he's a really good GM because he drafted like Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, who are also players that everybody liked. So it's kind of like
it's easy to make really good decisions when you're picking high and you're getting elite players that it doesn't matter where they go.
Overall every year.
Yeah.
Look,
so
I have no hate on Joe Douglas. That's ridiculous. Look, we've already been through, like, he's not perfect. I think being a general manager of a NFL team is just a thankless job because all you do is get picked on if you make poor decisions. And if you win a Super Bowl, it's the coach, the quarterback, the this, the that, right? It's a very, very thankless job. And Brian Gutekunst has led a winning football team ever since he took over. So that's
we've gotten so hyperbolic. People are saying that Goody is a bad GM for taking Jordan Love, and he got lucky with guys like Campbell and Rasul Douglas because they fell into his lap.
Isn't it arguably harder to find free agents than anything else?
So we're only holding his misses against him.
Yes,
but we're not giving him any credit for the hits.
This is what I mean by like people have such a hard time with nuance, right? Like, I just, so many things are true at the same time, and wow, I'm so.
That's
glad
what I was trying to say at the beginning. Well,
I'm
that's
jealous.
what I was trying to say at the beginning of it. Yeah, we are jealous of you, Perry. That was the thing I was trying to get at the beginning of this. Like, so many things can be true at the same time. And you look at the roster from 2018 to 2019, it's two totally different teams. And that's Brian Gutekunst coming in and flipping the script on that. But then you look at the roster from 2020 to 2021, and it really wasn't any different. And it really kind of sucked. Like, the fact that we didn't do exactly what we needed to do. So like, Brian Gutekunst was not good in that moment, but he was good in the previous moment. So it's like, you can have it both ways.
What GM is perfect all the time? What GM makes perfect decisions all the time?
Also, it's not like he didn't try. Like, like 2020 and 2021, they tried to add players. Like, they tried mid-season to get Odell, but this
takes
is
two
where
to tango.
the narrative is, narrative has got so lost with this, with the Odell thing, right? Specifically, because I know that's something that was talked about recently. They said to Odell, "We have no money, but if you want to come here and play with Aaron Rodgers and try and win a Super Bowl, we will happily have you." Which was the fact. They had no money, right?
Why do they have no money?
Yeah, right.
Why do they have no money?
It's like, well, they should have got more money. Like, they should have found some more money. Like,
COVID shouldn't have happened, and we shouldn't have lost
Yeah,
over
like-
millions of dollars.
And he said, "No, I'd rather go to LA for like 5 times as much money and
win a Super Bowl.
live in LA," which is fine. Like, there's no problem with that. That's absolutely fine. And
Who
then
do you-
they tried to get Will Fuller, and they wouldn't bite. Like, they wanted like a 2nd-round pick. That turned out to be a good decision. Like, he did try. Like, you know, he's the in on every conversation guy, but it's just got so lost over these years.
I hate that. Yeah, I hate that narrative that it doesn't matter if they don't get the player, because that means, like, when people say, "Oh, I don't want to hear that he tried to get XYZ," well, that means you want him to overpay so you get the person no matter what, which is
Would you have wanted to pay what the Bears did for Chase Claypool?
right. So if he gets them and then the player gets hurt or isn't good, what are you going to say? "Oh, what a dumb contract that they handed out. Why did they give up that pick to get this player?" Like,
And then an already cash-strapped team has
they're
less
broke.
cash.
They're broke. And
there's other ways to build a team too. It
I
doesn't have to be
I
just
see so much of this right on Twitter, and this is actually I haven't been on Twitter as much. If anyone follows me, they're like, "Where's Perry been?" It's deliberate. I'm also just working too much at the moment, but like, I see this narrative all the time, and it's so contradictory to me. And I just want to like bring
yeah, exactly.
I want to bring this up because everyone hates on the Packers for, like we're saying, not getting free agents. Okay, I get that. Then everyone hates on the draft and develop strategy because you have to pick good players. Then they get free agents like Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas and Alan Lazard and all these guys that contribute. Oh, but they're not the big name players. Why aren't they going after the big name players? And then they pay someone a lot of money, right, to keep them around. And they're like, but they have no money. Why are they paying that player?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's everything. Pick a lane. Which strategy do you want? The Packers are draft and develop. I saw this recently. I think it was like yesterday, the other day. I was like, you're only a draft and develop team if you actually keep your guys for the next contract. But then you're mad when the Packers only re-sign their guys and don't go get guys like Odell or Chase. Which one do you want?
If you want to,
Packers are draft and develop. They keep their guys that they draft. We love that about them, right? A couple of these guys go like MVS, and it happens. Like, can't keep Devontae Adams because of other reasons for a second contract, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's what they're choosing. So you have to accept that and be anti-draft and develop and want to be the Rams. You can't get mad at every single move they make.
If you want to encapsulate this, I would say, and obviously we've talked about this, nuance exists, but if you want to try to boil this down to as simple as possible, I think look at one player, right? And look at David Bakhtiari. So David Bakhtiari, multiple All-Pro, best left tackle in the league. He would have been a free agent, right? They give him a massive extension, well-deserved, completely should have extended him. So he's the best left tackle. He's the best offensive lineman on the free agent market. It doesn't not count because he was already on the team. So you've signed the best free agent offensive lineman that you could. So everyone would have been excited about that if it was, I don't know, like, I'm going to use another great player. What if it was Trent Williams? You'd love it if they signed Trent Williams. But because it was D-Bach and he was already on the team, it doesn't count. So then D-Bach gets hurt at the absolute worst possible time, which is right before the freaking playoffs in 2020, has a horrific injury, and it's taking him 2 full seasons to kind of round back into form. People are calling it one of the worst contracts ever given out, and Brian Gutekunst doesn't know what he's doing because why would they pay David Bakhtiari? If they would have let him walk, you would have been pissed because you would have said, why don't we keep some of our good players? He's the best left tackle in the NFL. Why are we letting him walk? So that goes perfectly with what you said. Like, everyone will find something to complain about.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't take a route that would have made you not complain if it was a separate player.
Kenny Clark is the same way, right?
Yeah.
Kenny Clark is one of the best nose tackles, defensive linemen in the league. They give him a massive extension, well worthy of it, right? That now he's totally priced, like the market is priced out of that, right? He's already cheap right now. That happened like 2 off seasons ago, but nobody cares about it because it's not a big name, right? Or nobody cares about it because Kenny's stats aren't high, because he doesn't have enough, like all these reasons to dislike. Why not just be happy that the players draft players they want to keep? Like, that's the ideal. That's the goal.
They just re-signed Alton Jenkins for. Like,
already also priced out the market.
Yeah, he basically tweeted, "Oops, I shouldn't have signed that. I shouldn't have signed that deal because these O-linemen, these O-linemen are getting ridiculous money. The Packers signed arguably the most versatile lineman in the league to pennies."
But Monte, like, I heard that the Packers treat their players terribly. So why would anyone want to sign a contract?
Why would he want to come back?
Stay here. Why would that happen? I don't get it.
Okay, can I ask a question? I'm going to pivot us a little bit. Sorry, Ty.
Yeah, please.
Can we talk about what we're excited about moving forward? Like, let's say this Rodgers deal gets done, right? This feels done. We said this at the top of the show. Like, this is inevitable.
Yeah, it's already done.
Like, what are we excited for? What are we looking forward to? What is this new era, this new chapter? What is this bringing us? Because I'm excited.
I think it brings us unlimited possibilities in the sense of we know what this Packers team looks like. There's that saying, the fear of the unknown. I think it's the excitement of the unknown, right? We know what this Packers team looks like with Aaron Rodgers and all of his friends, right? What is it going to look like with Jordan Love, right? I put out a couple clips of him scrambling throughout preseason. Nothing special. He didn't look like Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson out there. I'm not trying to whatever. He kind of looked like a young Aaron Rodgers, actually, with some of the ways he was scrambling. But, like, what does that mean for today's NFL? You look at what Jalen Hurts was able to do in Philly with the RPOs and the read options. Like, what if Jordan Love starts getting in on that? What's Matt LaFleur and Steno going to cook up with Jordan Love with that? Like, that to me is the most exciting thing. The fact that Jared Goff, I've said it before, the fact that Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl and Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl. I could not be more excited about this Jordan Love era. I'm not saying that Jordan Love is going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't want him to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Too much drama at this point, right? Cool. Go ahead and be a Hall of Fame quarterback.
It's next year down.
Hall of Very Good. Hall of Very Good.
Hall of Very Good. Really boring. Like, really boring off the field.
Something new. Give me something new.
I'm with you, Ty. I feel like we're getting like the season premiere of a new show that we've been waiting for so long. Like, we've gotten the previews, but like, now we've got this like new HBO show. It's dropping every Sunday night, and we're all like waiting every week for it because we can't wait to see, because it's an idea that like no one's thought of. What I'm excited most about is to finally see the truest form of a Matt LaFleur offense. I think this is like a thought, a narrative that is getting a little bit lost now, which is everyone saying like, well, is Matt LaFleur really a good head coach, or has he really just had Aaron Rodgers? I think we all have our opinions. I'm sure they're all fairly similar in that we believe Matt LaFleur is a good head coach, right?
Yeah.
We're finally going to get to see the truest form of his offense, because you're not getting Jordan Love audibles at the line. Maybe there's some checks built in, right? And maybe he'll improvise if necessary, if things break down. But you're getting a guy who's going to run this offense. And I can't wait to see what that looks like.
Yeah,
I will say, there is nothing wrong with what Aaron Rodgers was able to do with Matt LaFleur.
No,
I think that gets a little bit, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you guys say this, but there are some people on Twitter that are like, oh, it's Jordan Love's time. Aaron Rodgers sucked. He didn't run Matt LaFleur's offense. Like, no. I think he ran the offense. I was very grateful. He won 2 MVPs because of this. I was very grateful to have an absolute brainiac back there that can recall a play or a solid defense, or found some leverage back in 2012 that he could use in 2023. That's an incredible thing to have, and something Jordan's not going to have. And it's going to be very interesting to see. Matt LaFleur is going to have to be the best coach that he can be. He's going to have to be almost Sean McVay-like, where he's telling him, hey, throw it to number 9, okay? Because number 9 is going to be open, right? It's going to have to be that way. And that's not saying Jordan is stupid,
totally agree.
but there's experience that comes with an Aaron Rodgers level quarterback. We're not going to have that anymore. So there's excitement in the fact that like we get to build some new experience and build something new and allow that to come to fruition. But it's going to be really interesting, and I can't believe how excited I am for it, to be honest. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, the way I look at it is we have seen what the Matt LaFleur offense can look like with an absolute cyborg at quarterback. That was 2020, right? Just like we saw how good the Mike McCarthy offense can be when you have a cyborg at quarterback. But now Mike McCarthy takes that offense to Dallas. The quarterback's not as good. It's still effective, but you're not seeing it the way you saw it when Aaron Rodgers was running it. So I'm looking forward to, like you said, Tyler, you put those clips together. Like those are all plays you weren't going to see Aaron Rodgers run since 2010, probably, right? So
he was never really a running quarterback,
right? Yeah, he was never going to be running RPO quarterback keepers ever in his career. So,
he was good at it though. He was good at it when he was young.
He was a great runner, but that's not where the league was when he was a runner.
No, especially not in that West Coast stagnant shotgun 5 wide, like whatever. Like there was no
11 personnel.
I personally think how much and what you're looking forward to is a direct correlation of how prepared are you for this team not to be good, right? Because if you are thinking, well, they're replacing Aaron Rodgers, they better be damn good and damn sure of what they're doing because they should still be a contender. So like if you're thinking like that, you're probably not looking forward to much because you're almost guaranteed to be worse, right?
Yeah.
So if you are prepared to be able to root for a team that's not expected to be good and actually might not be good, you're going to be looking for different things and having different expectations. So I am personally looking forward to kind of an amalgam of what we've all said so far. They're going to be running different stuff. We're going to be actually just seeing a different quarterback. And I want to see that, Jordan Love knows that ideally he would have had an audition year last year to show like I can do it or I can't. He's had a year to progress. So now he gets to go out there and say like, what if he has a dynamite season and the team doesn't win very much? Like that happened with Aaron Rodgers in 2008, right? Like after that season, you said, damn, like this wasn't a great year, but this quarterback is really, really good. So adjust your expectations based on what you think they're going to do. I'm just looking forward to him actually getting the shot that he's done nothing but earn, because for all the vitriol that the team got on draft night, he got on draft night, he's never done anything other than be good enough to make the Packers want to draft him. So like now he gets to show why they did it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to just the newness of it, just like because maybe this is obviously I wasn't really like watching the Packers at the time when Rodgers took over, but like I imagine this is what it felt like if you were a person who was ready for that transition. I'm just like I'm going to be rooting for Jordan so hard, like to be good. Like I want him to be good almost more than I want the Packers to be good. Like at this point, because I just have that like he's waited for this for so long, for 3 years, and like it looked like he was ready for it. So I just hope he grasps the opportunity, and I'm ready to just like the first time he throws a touchdown pass in a meaningful game that actually like he's not filling in for somebody, like he's the guy now. Like the first time he hits Christian Watson for a big play and stuff like that. And then also just like, like small things like a quarterback will like throw over the middle of the field. That'd be nice.
Running back in the flat.
Check, like when everyone's looking at the TV going, check down, hit the check. Oh, okay. Like, and he just chucked it long. Maybe that won't happen. And also just like the return of motion. Maybe like motion will come back to the offense and actually stay. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see if like LaFleur just kind of goes like, kind of shows the league like, yeah, this is actually what my offense is, like kind of thing, like almost goes like over the top with it. Like, yeah,
I think our expectations have to be truncated a little bit here though. Like that first year, it's going to be a filling out process, and it's going to be of like, it's not going to be crazy. Like wild card is the goal. Let's be real. Like you need to get a wild card spot. The NFC is wide open. If you're not getting a wild card spot, something's not wrong. The playoffs are the goal, right? But that aside, like there's going to be a learning curve, and there needs to be some patience. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of us too. Like Jordan Love is going to get crucified when he throws that first pick in week 1 or week 2, whenever it comes, right? He's going to get crucified, but it's going to happen. And so we have to, like, I just feel like you're not gonna be able to stop it ever, but there just needs to be some sort of like, hey,
I mean,
it's not.
I think it's going to be a very similar season to 2022, but for very different reasons.
Yes,
interesting.
It's going to be rocky. It's going to be bumpy. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. There are going to probably be more interceptions than we're used to.
Yeah, of course.
But guess what? Rodgers threw intercept. Like the defense gets paid too. And you just want Love to grow. And I think if the Packers end the season 9-8 with a potential wild card spot like in the works in December, just like this past season, that feels like a successful year to me, right? Because like I'm not expecting them be contenders. I think that's so unrealistic. Rodgers first was 6-10, right? But instead of it being a disappointment, because it's, you can just feel that window closing, or it's already closed in 2022. That window is wide open, right? Like the sky is kind of the limit. Let's see what our floor is. This season is going to be the floor.
As someone that didn't see it play out the way I wanted, which was like them trading Rodgers in 2021, the silver lining for me is obviously Jordan Love was going. If you thought Aaron Rodgers had like a lot of pressure replacing Favre, he did, obviously. I would argue Jordan Love has more because now he's following 2 absolute legendary quarterbacks instead of just one for number 1. But number 2, if he would have been starting this last season, you are replacing the back-to-back MVP who was in the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row, lost in the divisional round the last year. So now, okay, good luck. Like now you're in the spotlight. Now he's replacing a 9-8 team that didn't make the playoffs, that Aaron Rodgers struggled in his final year. I still can't believe he had 0 300-yard games. I have to look at that stat every time to make sure it's true because that seems crazy to me. But you're replacing him after a much worse season than you would have last year. So if you had an NFC Championship game team that you're replacing and you fail to make the playoffs, that looks a hell of a lot worse than, well, the Packers missed the playoffs again, but they were going through a QB transition this time. So like there's so much nuance to this upcoming season. I think there's just going to be so many different storylines for people to look at.
Sorry, I thought you were still talking.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're exactly. I was like, oh, yeah, go on. I was like, oh, really? Tell me more about that landscape. That's phenomenal.
Neighbors in the chat.
Oh, Negma's in the chat. He's probably going after. Hey, look, there's shout out to what's her name here? I gotta find her. I think Amanda Kennas. She's been in the chat this whole time. Look, she's feeling some feelings about Aaron Rodgers here. And I do want to say this. For those of you who are really, really just dug in, and the Packers have really hurt Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers didn't get enough weapons, and the Packers just really wasted his talent. Like, I just gotta say, like, I hear you. And I feel like I understand why you're saying these things. Like, you're not wrong. Like, there are instances which the Packers multiple years in a row did not do enough for Aaron Rodgers. But in the here and the now, you have to think about it. Obviously, 2010, they win the Super Bowl. 2011, they should have won the Super Bowl. Life happens any given Sunday, right? 2014, they should have won the Super Bowl. Stuff happened, right? 2020, they should have won the Super Bowl. Stuff happens. Like, I understand that there's an emotional connection with somebody being your quarterback for 18 years, 15 as a starter. Like, so I completely understand where you're coming from when you say those things. But for someone else, like us 4 here and many others who are in the chat and on Twitter who want to move on, it's not a personal thing towards Aaron Rodgers. For some, it may be, but that's the thing. It's a spectrum, right? There's nuance. Multiple things can be true at once. I talked about it this whole episode. I understand where you're coming from, but sometimes like it's okay to want to move on. And that doesn't mean that you're disrespecting the quarterback or what he did for your team. I put out the video of Aaron Rodgers and it's like, thank you 12. And it's got this emotional trailer music from Black Panther, like whatever. And then all of a sudden it shows like Jordan Love and the excitement. That's the story. It's about the transition. as much as I respect Aaron Rodgers, we are in a period of transition right now. So that doesn't, me putting out that video, a 2-minute clip, cannot possibly encapsulate all the memories and all the love that I have for Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, for my team and what he did for my team. And yeah, it sucks he never won another Super Bowl with the Packers, but like that's life. It happens. That's why I'm excited to move on. I'm excited to see whatever. It's not a disrespectful thing. And that's where I get frustrated online. It's like, you can't say anything critical of Aaron Rodgers. You can't say anything critical of anybody that had to do with anything other than without being called a shill for the front office or being whatever. And that's where I get so frustrated.
The way I look at it is, and I think I don't know, a couple of days ago, I tweeted something out to this effect that you always, like, when things don't work out the way you want, you always want to look back and say, it didn't work because this happened, right? Which is why 2020 is the lightning rod for, they shouldn't have taken Jordan Love, they should have taken a wide receiver, right? David Bakhtiari's knee grenaded before the playoffs. Like, against that game in Tampa, like, Rodgers had Shaq Barrett in his lap every snap because they couldn't protect. Like, I get it, right? It's easy to look and say, well, if they had a guy that would have produced, that's better than a guy that didn't. Obviously, that's true. It all matters of, do you think that guy they had would have produced enough to overcome the best pass blocking left tackle in football not being able to be on the field? And I don't think so. So the further you get away from when it should have happened, the more you want a reason for why it didn't, because it's hard to accept that shit happens sometimes and it doesn't work out the way that A, you wanted it to, or B, that you think it should have. So it's hard to reconcile that. You never want to let it go, but Aaron Rodgers was always not going to play for us at some point. And like I said earlier, if he wants to play into his 40s, that's fine, but it shouldn't be here, because you're intentionally hamstringing yourself. You're intentionally making it longer from the next time you contend by trying to hold on when you no longer do contend. Yeah. So it's never easy, but it's a shorter of a hard period when you put a plan in place and you have to see if it works. Again, I'm not saying it's going to work, but the longer you're holding on to what doesn't, you're further away from when it eventually does. If it's Jordan Love or whoever's after him, who knows?
Football,
if you ever want to get back to winning,
it's the ultimate team sport, right? And I feel like Rodgers obviously clouds that understanding for Packers fans because he's been Superman for 15 years, right? He has dragged teams that had no business being where they were to some level of, division round. I'm thinking about that Arizona game, right? Like that's the ultimate example of just like Superman. But it is, like you said, Monty, it is the ultimate team sport. And it's so easy to look at dominoes, like losing a David Bakhtiari or any other injury, or the fact that there were no fans in the stands, or if, Brandon Bostic hadn't done that. There's, I think all you're going to do by looking back on this is just like agonize yourself. Yeah. We're not changing it, right? Do I think the Packers deserve to win all of those years? Of course I do. Do I think Aaron Rodgers deserved to have multiple rings like the great quarterback that he is? Of course I do. But every year, 31 teams go home disappointed. Only one team is happy.
Yep.
Right. And like, it's fun as like, if you're a media person, to make all these comparisons and look at like, oh, well, Patrick Mahomes was able to do this, et cetera, et cetera. No team roster builds the same way. No team has the same pieces together, same cap space, same quarterback.
Same luck.
And luck.
Yeah.
Right. And luck. And it just is. It's an any given Sunday situation. And we as Packers fans, I think, should know that more than anybody else. The random shit that has happened that has probably caused them not to make it back to the big dance. So I don't know. I think if you are one of those fans that's like really upset, it's fair, right? It's scary. It's a scary chapter. If Sundays you're used to that consistency of that guy 12 going out there and probably winning you a game, and it's fun and it's easy. This sucks. This is crazy, but you're just going to make it worse for yourself, I think, by not enjoying what's to come by continuously looking back. You're not going to change back.
Or enjoying the process, looking at it as a whole. It's not the finality of a season being over isn't as final as people think. It carries over into the next season. Players carry
100%.
over. It's not a hard reset where you're losing all 90-man roster and moving on to a new 90-man roster. There's carryover. It's a long progressing story. And that's why I think one of my reasons why I'm a huge Packers fan, obviously I was born into it and that helps, but maybe for Mark, as someone who joined on as a Packers fan who didn't grow up with the Packers, you can speak to this a little bit more, but it's such a historic and storied franchise. We love a good story as humans, right? And the fact that the Packers have one of the best, coolest stories of all time, like starting out in humble beginnings in, nowhere, Wisconsin, turning into whatever and making Green Bay what it is today and putting it on the map simply because a football team is an incredible, long, historic story. And I think that's part of the reason why we love this team. And we'll get into this in just a second, but I do want to hear Mark talk about it. But I want to know while Mark's talking, think about this. Was the journey worth it? The 18 years of Aaron Rodgers, the fact that we only won one Super Bowl, was it worth it? That's all I want to know. So think about that. Mark, tell me about because you became a Packers fan. We talked about it on Packers After Dark last year. You became a Packers fan in 2010. Is that right?
Yeah, well, 2011, like literally the first game, the first NFL game I ever watched was Super Bowl 45. Like that was the first game I ever watched. And obviously before the game, I was like, I just picked a team. Oh shit. What the fuck happened?
You're good. You're still going.
Oh my god. That's all right. Everybody else disappeared from my screen. So that's on me. Anyway.
You're good.
Yeah. So I picked a team to root for before the game, and like because it was like on BBC, and I don't know anything about it, so they're like spelling it out, the Super Bowl, for like all of us idiots. So like they're kind of like, here's what this team's about, here's what this team's about, and I just like picked the Packers to win. Like I was like, I want the Packers to win, and they did, and they were just my team from then. So it was like I joined at the highest point, and we've never made it back. But like, I genuinely don't think I would have stayed with the team so long, like if it wasn't for everything that I then went on to find out about the team and like how the team even still exists to this day, and just like the miracle that is essentially. And it's just like it is like difficult even for me. Obviously, like I didn't see the Favre to Rodgers transition, but all I've known is Rodgers. So like it is like a difficult thing. He's the only quarterback I've ever like watched with the Packers. So it's tough, but it's like it's the team that dragged me into it. So it's like, well, that's what I'm here for, kind of thing, you know. And I think going back to like the question that you kind of told everybody to think about, if I can just speak on that, like the journey was absolutely worth it. And this is something that I've had a problem with recently, is like and I'll always have a problem with it, and it will always be a discussion point. Is this only one Super Bowl, or like you've had these two quarterbacks for 30 years and you only had 2 Super Bowls? It's like, how many teams in the last, like since the Packers won the Super Bowl with Favre, how many teams have had more than 2 Super Bowls? It's like 2. I think it's like 2 teams. It's like, yes, you had those great quarterbacks. So the expectation is that you can have this dynasty and win 5, 6, 7. But only one team has ever done that. The Patriots have just warped the expectations. And it's like, I will never look at it as only 2 Super Bowls. It's that we have 2 Super Bowls in the last 30 years for a team that before that was completely inept for a long time. And Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Like, just because you're a great quarterback doesn't mean you get to win a Super Bowl. Like,
we should know that better than anyone.
Like I just think about it from the positive. It's like, I know that's not, and I know it's title town, but the NFL is geared towards every team being able to recycle and be competitive. Yes. The Packers have like defied the odds in how many games they've won every year, and that matters. Like, that's important, going on every Sunday thinking you can win. Like, I would rather do what the Packers have done than what even though it's maybe the same end result, what the Bucks or the Rams have done, where they were bad for years and then they were suddenly good for 2 years and then now bad again. Like, I would rather do what
my go-to phrase is, it's hard to win the Super Bowl unless A, you're Tom Brady, and B, you are willing to throw away X amount of years to make sure you win it in one. So, right, because again, the Bucks and the Rams, they both won home field Super Bowls. Those franchises are falling apart right now. If you've never seen a Bucks or your team win a Super Bowl in your lifetime, you don't care at this point how bad they're going to be for a little bit, because in your home stadium, they won the Super Bowl. You were on top of the mountain. They sold their soul to do it. So as a fan, you don't care so much. Now, again, those same fans, what if the Bucks and the Rams don't make another Super Bowl for 25 years? Like, do you like, if you ask them then, was this all worth that Super Bowl in 2020? They might say, I enjoyed it, but it's been hell since then, right? So it's hard to not live in the moment, and it's hard to not be reactionary. But just like Mark said, I mean, I've seen the Packers go to 3 Super Bowls in my lifetime and win 2. If that's all I ever see, that's way more than some other people have gotten. Like, do I wish they won more? Sure, but I'm certainly not going to be embarrassed that they only won 2 when you can't take those away. And like that's how I view it.
I would never trade this for anything.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with you guys completely, and I think, Mark, you hit the nail on the head. Like, only I do agree that, like, I think we've forgotten how difficult it is to win, especially because our most recent memory is a Patriots dynasty and a guy that Tom Brady's one of one. Like, that team is just one of one. It's not how it works. And instead of looking at them like the anomaly that they are, they're now all of a sudden the standard. They're the standard, and no one is ever going to live up to that standard because it isn't a standard. It's an outlier. So no, I would never trade in this time. I would never trade in my memories of watching the Super Bowl with my dad and my sister. When I did, I even wouldn't trade all of the times we've lost in the NFC Championship game, because guess what? We made it to the NFC Championship game. Like, I think, to take it back to the whole reason why we're all talking about this, is Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks who has ever lived. He is, like he said, arguably the greatest in our franchise history, and we got to witness it. We got to spend 15 years watching him play football, knowing every August that this year we could do it again. Confidently say we could do it again. And again, it didn't happen, but it doesn't, like, take away from knowing every year that you are a bona fide contender. Imagine going into every season being like, man, I gotta watch my team go like three wins this year. Like we got all of, and like so much of sports is like the anticipation and the buildup and the cheering and the camaraderie and like all of that. And this team has given us like contender football. And I wouldn't change that, because every year when you give yourself a chance, you're saying, if the ball bounces one way instead of the other way this year, we're in the big dance. It didn't happen for the Packers, but there was always the possibility. So I'm not,
there's no good time to end that kind of a chapter. Like, and that's the thing. Like,
it's never going to be pretty unless you win 2 in a row and then retire.
Yeah, and then rides off into the sunset. Like, that doesn't happen. And that's the thing. Like, once we realized that wasn't going to happen, and this was it, right? And I think the Packers kind of knew that, right? After Jordan Love was drafted, like, there's your 3-year window. Like, NFL teams build for 3 to 4 year windows. Like, it's the way that it works. Like, they all try to win it with rookie, whether it's the rookie quarterback method or the go all in method or whatever they try to, however they try and do it. That's what the Packers did. They tried to win in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And it didn't work out. And that's part of life. Like, I think there has to be some sort of, not even maturity, but there has to be an acceptance that comes with the fact that, like, it's never going to be reality. Life isn't perfect. And this is just reality. And that's part of it. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah. And obviously, if you want to use the word maturity, like, part of that is accepting reality. But the way I look at it is, it seems like so many people are worried about openly being a fan or rooting for or following a team that's not elite to very good, right? Because anyone even near our ages has spent their entire lives bragging on Bears, Lions, and Vikings fans that we're on top of the mountain. You're chasing us. So it seems like people aren't ready to reap that in return, which was always going to happen at some point because all teams are bad. But B, I push back on the argument that you're not ready to know how that is, because if you follow more than the Packers, you probably have followed a bad team at some point in your life and been a fan of them, right? We're not Boston fans. We haven't seen like the Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, and Pats win every 3 years or whatever. So if you're a Brewers fan or a Bucks fan or
I'm a Mets fan.
Or a Mets fan, like
I'm a
you
Mets
know what
fan.
it's yeah,
Or an
you know what
Oakland
it's
A's.
like. You know what it's like to root for a team that's not very good all the time. So you're just going to have to merge that into your football fandom. Like
I think that's why I'm so grateful for the Packers, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I do have that other side where, like, I'm a diehard Mets fan. Like, where's my Mets hat behind me? I have a watercolor photo of Pete Alonso next to me. Like, I love that team. They are so bad every year until recent, and I still go and I still love them. And then I have this other team that is like championship ready every year, and I get to like actually appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. And I think that's why I also I can empathize, but I still strongly and almost vehemently disagree with a lot of people that are just so like, the Packers screwed up. They're leaving Aaron Rodgers. They're doing this. They're doing that. Like, I empathize with that, like I was saying before, but I strongly disagree because we've been so spoiled. There comes a breaking point. Like, your spoilage cannot last forever. Look at the Patriots, the Packers after the 60s, right? I'm not saying the Packers are going to go into the era of the 70s and 80s again, like some people are out saying, but like, I feel like the Packers, if there's going to be a breakup, the way that it happened is not the worst way for it to happen. Like, Rodgers said he thought about retirement, got a little pissed off when he found out they were trying to trade him, whatever. If that's the truth, then that's the way it happened. It is what it is. It's the end of an era, right? And the journey that we talked about before, of course, I'm thankful for it. Like, waking up every freaking September being like, yes, my team is going to the Super Bowl this
We
year.
can do it
Even
again.
last year. Even last year, even though I knew in the back of my mind it wasn't going to happen, I was still
thought it
like,
could.
Monte could attest to this. I went through the 5
Yep.
stages of grief while we were
He
hanging
did.
out. Like, I was so still thinking by like week 8 that they could still turn this around and make it happen. And then it just didn't happen, but that's part of it, right? That's life. And it sucks, but I'm not going to be upset like when next year the Packers are 9-8 and barely squeak into the wild card and lose. Like, I'm not going to be upset because I'm going to be grateful that the Packers don't have to go into a full rebuild, but I'm also going to be grateful for the past, and I'm going to be excited about the future. It doesn't need to be this like crazy, like, this is it, the Packers are screwed, but it also doesn't need to be like, oh, Jordan Love is Himothy. Like, it's, like, there's
it does actually, Tyler. It does. He is
Guys, I'm sorry. I have to transition out of this.
That's fine. We're wrapping up right now.
Give us your closing statement. Put a bow on it. We'll each
we need your closing statement for this.
Okay. I don't know. I think I'm grateful for a community of people who care so much. Like, regardless of if we all agree, I wish people were kinder about it because this is a game. Yeah, remember, it's a game. We all enjoy this for fun. But like, we are all part of a community of people that like care so much. And that's awesome. Like, this team is built on us. Right there.
Yeah.
Like,
we own it.
We own it. The Packers actually they created this team, right, for the fans, by the fans. So it's awesome to be passionate about it and have your opinions, and we'll all figure it out once the season starts how this looks. We'll figure it out year 2, year 3, and if nothing else, like, I guess just be grateful for what we've had and for the passion that we all feel for this team. I think people who don't have passion for football think I'm a nut.
Probably. Like, this doesn't ruin your week. My closing statement would be that I'm of the opinion, and well, it's not really an opinion, it's just a fact. Every team is bad at some point. Maybe this is the Packers' turn, but at least they have a plan. So we just have to see if it works.
Mark, give us your closing statement, buddy. It's been a journey.
It has, man. Like, grateful for 12. Like, so grateful for all the moments, all the like, the run the table year. Like, was just the most amazing thing ever. Like, everything that he's done for the team and like the joy he's given us. So grateful. relieved to be at the end of that chapter because it was time. I think Jordan is going to be good. I don't know how good, but I think he's going to be good. I don't think the Packers are going to be like a basement dweller the next couple of years. I still think we have a lot to be positive about. And yeah, like I'm positive about the future. I'm looking forward. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you guys for doing this. Long form content is kind of weird. A lot of people are not doing it these days. You know, it's little 30-second grabs.
We're really on the pulse here. Like with the 1 hour.
This isn't making TikTok.
Yeah, this isn't going to make TikTok here. So, you know, and that's why I wanted to do this, because I feel like there's so much conjecture online right now that's 30-second clips, and you can't encapsulate 18 years, if not more, 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play, and how fans that grew up in, you know, the tail end of one era through all the way to another to the beginning of a new one, you know, in the best way possible. So I'll have to borrow from some people that are smarter than me and say, you know, things like, this really is time for a new generation of Packers fans to come up with their heroes, like Aaron Nagler said on Cheesehead TV 10 years ago. It's time for, you know what I mean? Like, it's time for new things to happen. I know, right? It was so good. It was so good. Aaron Nagler wrote that on the Cheesehead TV blog post in 2008 or whatever. Like, it really is time for a new generation of Packers fans to have their new heroes. And I think it's weird, right? It kind of makes you feel a little bit old if you're kind of around our age, or maybe a little bit young if you're, you know, a little bit younger, or older, the other way around. Like, it is what it is. Like, I'm just excited for the future, grateful for the past, and really glad that we get to go through it together as friends, and everybody that's been on Packers Twitter. Thank you to those that tuned in tonight, by the way. We had like at one point 350 people hanging out with us tonight, just chatting, going through all this drama and talking about it. And a lot of people fighting in the comments, but that's life, right? That's the internet. So we'll put out this podcast so people can listen to it on their car rides and plane rides and trains to work and things like that. And Mark, thanks for staying up late with us. What time is it over there?
We're looking at 12:45 a.m.
You're good. It's before 1.
Let's go. Hour 4.
Let's go.
I love it. No, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Packers After Dark. It's the only long form Packers content out there right now for the off season, and we're going to keep it rolling. And I'll keep it through the off season and see how it goes until I get bored or tired or lazy of it and start it back up next year. So that'll be fun. No, go Pack go. We're going to be okay. The Packers are going to be okay. We're not blowing it up and rebuilding. We're re-signing our core guys. We're running it back, but with a new QB, a younger QB. And it's going to be exciting. I can't wait for year 2 of Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Let's go. I can't wait. It's going to be great. Appreciate you guys. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for tuning in. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack,
Here's
go.
to the future, baby.
Pack, go.